We appreciate you all gathering here today in the show of solidarity with the Palestinian people, who are undergoing unfathomable terrors at the hands of the Zionist entity occupying their land. It is heartwarming to see that despite the disingenuous efforts to label all criticisms of the apartheid state of Israel as anti-Semitic, an idea which so many of our Jewish comrades around the world are organizing to deny, everyone here has come together to demand a ceasefire and an end to the genocidal occupation that has committed numerous crimes against humanity and has murdered almost 1% of Palestine's total population in just a month by some estimates, with 70% of those murdered being women and children. We strongly support the phone banking initiative forwarded by South Dakota Voices for Peace. We have information about it over there, and we encourage everyone here to participate in calling our representatives and demanding a ceasefire. The more pressure we put on our government to listen to the demands of the people they are supposed to represent, the better. However, as socialists, we know that this is not enough. Even if a complete and total ceasefire is achieved, it will only serve to give the Israeli occupation a chance to regroup and plan their next course of action. In our world economy, the rule of capital reigns supreme, and there is a lot of money to be made in these acts of violence, genocide, and terrorism. This is one of the reasons why our governor, Kristi Noem, who postures as a warrior for freedom and liberty, signed an executive order banning the boycott of the State of Israel, making it de facto illegal to make the conscious and informed choice to stop the purchasing of Israeli goods. Israel ultimately acts as an aircraft carrier for the US in the Middle East, making it no surprise that they have received over $3 billion in US military funding annually for many years, and another huge sum in the last month of $14 billion to aid in the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Elbit, an Israeli arms company, has made countless billions of dollars in the trading of arms to imperialist military forces aggressing Palestine, Latin America, and many African countries seeking liberation from colonialism. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman, American defense contractors who have supplied Israel with missiles and other materials used in the gruesome carpet bombings of the Gaza Strip, all saw their stock prices skyrocket after October 7th. Make no mistake, our elected officials are not tribunes of the people, nor is it truly their job to represent the interests of the working class majority in this country. It is rather their job to ensure the protection of the interests of capital, no matter the cost in innocent human lives. It's also important to remember that if our representatives do sign on to a ceasefire, which I hope they do, it would not only go against the will of the imperialist hegemon that employs them, it would in fact go directly against their own immediate and direct personal financial interest. The lobbying group AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, just to name one of the many pro-Israel lobbying groups in America, offers huge sums to candidates who will support Israeli imperialism in their legislation and communications to their constituencies. And yes, our own representatives are on their payroll. Former South Dakota Senator Tim Johnson has received over $348,869 over the course of his career from such lobbying groups. Our current senators, Mike Rounds and John Thune, respectively, have themselves received $177,950 and $461,724 from pro-Israel lobbying groups, adding up to a total of well over $500,000. And Dusty Johnson, our House representative, himself has received over $30,000 in funding from such groups. But not only that, he took a trip to Israel on their dime to meet with the same officials who have been publicly calling the Palestinian people human animals, dogs, and savages. All of these are regulars at the annual AIPAC conference, which they use to expand their influence in the political sphere and mingle with other American imperialists with even greater influence than their own. Something here doesn't add up. These officials represent South Dakota. Our motto is under God, the people rule. However, when 65% of all Americans support a ceasefire, a clear majority, including over 80% of Democrats, and yet our voices go unheard or silenced. Our DSA comrades in Washington and all over the country flew in to stand in front of the DMC, lock arms, and sing, as peaceful of a protest as you can get. They were met with tear gas, pepper spray, and thrown down the stairs of the DNC and called terrorists. Well, obviously the people do not rule. Under God, what God would support the use of white phosphorus against civilians and children, which burns the flesh and reignites with exposure to oxygen? What God would support the military targeting of hospitals, schools, and refugee camps? What God would smile upon the displacement of millions of people from their homes, with carpet bombing that has destroyed half of all housing in the Gaza Strip? If we are under God, we should surely fear their wrath. And what of freedom? The USA claims to be a beacon for civil liberties, free speech, democracy. However, as I just said, protesters across the country are being met with arrests, pepper spray, tear gas, and police brutality when they express their desire for a ceasefire. What gives? I'm here today to bring to our collective attention that the US is no democracy at all. As Marxist Unity Group, a caucus within the DSA of which I am a member, pointed out in our resolution, Winning the Battle for Democracy, the United States is the world hegemon, run by and for the capitalist class, and the specific political form of this class rule is the liberal constitutional regime as outlined in the US slaveholders' constitution. This constitution did emerge as a charter for plutocracy, imposed by a class alliance of the slavocracy and capitalists, in order to counter the democratic and leveling political influence of freeholders, one of the driving forces of the revolution. The political institutions established by the Constitution are intended to be an obstacle to democracy at every step, despite what we are taught in our elementary school civics classes. The exceedingly difficult process for constitutional amendment, the unrepresentative Senate, the imperial presidency, and electoral college combine to throttle the sovereignty of the people. This is compounded by further counter-revolutionary usurpations, such as judicial review by a panel of unelected judges who serve for life and are not subject to recall, the establishment of a standing army and militarized police force to repress our own people, and the sale of elections, officials, legal services, and the press to the highest bidder. While the toiling and oppressed masses have been able to win concessions from the reactionary slaveholders' constitution, including the Bill of Rights, Reconstruction, and Civil Rights Amendments, the extreme concentration of capital and its political power over the course of the 20th and 21st centuries, and especially since the advent of neoliberalism, has rendered reform by constitutional amendment and federal legislation in this country nearly impossible. The overturning of Roe v. Wade, the retreat of the Supreme Court from enforcing of the Voting Rights Act. And their attack on the regulatory and administrative state demonstrates that any reform won through class struggle is ultimately unsafe and insecure under the reactionary liberal constitutional regime, which is designed to concentrate political power in the hands of the propertied classes. It's true, the USA is no democracy at all. It only serves to bolster the will of capital and those that possess it. But what is to be done in the face of this unsavory political reality, where working class political power is little more than an illusion? A constitutional convention, yes, a third American revolution is necessary, but our working class is more fractured than ever. The capitalist hegemony in media seeks to divide us along the lines of sex, race, gender, and other dividing lines, which intersectionality politics rightfully seeks to amend. However, the one thing that even the most progressive of liberals will obscure from us is in fact our most vital tool, the lens of class analysis. The truth is that regardless of our ethnicity or our sexuality, most of us share one incredibly important characteristic: we are working class. Even those of us that own homes and small businesses have much more in common with the classically understood working class than with those who control our government or the billionaires who fund these PACs. And for the most part, we all share in the general interests of the working class. As the Democrats and Republicans have proven, despite their differences on social matters, which are incredibly important, don't get me wrong, they are united in their total support for imperialist violence around the globe, and they would violently suppress any United States citizen who would seek to get in their way. This is why we need a mass, independent, working-class party, untethered from the interests of imperialism. This party could empower all of us by giving us access to true democratic process, together, united by our common class interests, even in our political diversity. With this power in numbers and in solidarity, we could begin to meaningfully challenge capitalist hegemony and fight for that third American revolution. That revolution which could liberate all of us from the shackles of capitalism, as well as liberating the colonized peoples here at home and the rest of the world's oppressed peoples from the boot placed on their neck by the imperialist military-industrial complex, including the people of Palestine, against the will of the people who fund it with our tax dollars. Woo! This is a tall order, I know, but it begins with small steps. To achieve the kind of working-class political power that we would need to smash the rule of capital, we must organize together and begin working out our political differences democratically and productively, rather than through the kind of argumentation that can bear no fruit. By working together to strategize, organize, and build power, we can plant the seeds for the independent party that we truly need. This is why I implore all of you here today, all of you who support democracy, justice, freedom, and prosperity, these American ideals we've been taught to love and cherish, but have come to find are illusory under our nation's current constitution and are only really enjoyed by the billionaires of the world, to join the DSA. Organize with us here in South Dakota, in the heart of the Midwest, itself in the heart of the imperial core, so we can build that kind of power together. I believe we can establish meaningful and true democracy to ensure the flourishing of every child in the world, to advance education and social support for all people, regardless of their characteristics, and to build a world that is truly peaceful and just by supporting indigenous self-determination here at home and ending imperialist military aggression, not only against the Palestinians and in the Middle East, but everywhere in the world. Solidarity forever. No war but class war. Thank you.